I'll never forget the day I decided to rent out my Manhattan apartment. I'd just moved in with my elderly mother to help care for her, so my place was sitting empty, and honestly, I didn't want it going unused. It felt like the responsible thing to do, and I needed the extra income. That's when I met Jane, this woman from Queensland, Australia. She seemed great on paper, steady job, clean credit history, all that. But there was one thing. She didn't have any landlord references. I thought it was a little odd, but I figured I could trust her since she seemed so upfront and promising. Plus, she was charming in a way that made me want to believe people, you know? We made the agreement. 7 months, rent on time, no issues. For a while, it felt like a win-win. But then, out of nowhere, Jane stopped paying. No calls, no texts, nothing. At first, I thought maybe something happened, a crisis, maybe, so I reached out. No response. Then one day, I went by the apartment and found it empty. Like, completely gone. No forwarding address, no note, just vanished. That was when the reality hit. She disappeared, and I was on the hook. I had to start eviction proceedings, which felt insane because she wasn't even there. The courts took their time, but in the end, they ruled in my favor. Still, winning in court didn't mean I got my money back. Jane had managed to slip through all the cracks. Honestly, I felt a mix of anger and helplessness. How can someone just walk away like that and leave you with all the damage and unpaid rent? At that moment, it hit me. This wasn't just about one bad tenant. It was about protecting myself and others from getting blindsided like this. I knew I couldn't let this go quietly. So, I started thinking hard about what I could do next, not just to recoup my losses but to make sure no one else got burned by Jane's little disappearing act. Okay, so after months of dealing with missed rent and empty promises, I finally took the tenant to court. I figured the legal system would be my safety net, a way to make things right, at least on paper. Winning the eviction notice felt like a small victory, and when the court granted me a financial judgment for the unpaid rent and damages, I thought the worst was behind me. But that's when things started slipping through my fingers in ways I hadn't predicted. The tenant, let's call her Emma, she just stopped showing up for her court dates. At first, I thought she might be negotiating or maybe afraid of the consequences. But soon I found out she had actually packed up and flown back to Australia. No forwarding address, no way to reach her easily. It felt like she had vanished into thin air. And honestly, that's when the whole situation escalated from annoying to downright infuriating. Because here's the thing. Even though the judgment was in my favor, actually collecting what I was owed was a completely different story. I started looking into international enforcement, and the process was a nightmare. The legal fees and logistical headaches of chasing someone across the globe for money they probably wouldn't pay, it just didn't make financial or emotional sense. Courts in New York could decide on my case, sure, but getting an Australian court to recognize and enforce that judgment? That was another battle altogether. I remember sitting at my kitchen table late one night, staring at a pile of papers and emails from lawyers, lease agreements, and court notices. The math in my head was clear. Chasing Emma through the legal system would cost more than whatever she owed me. But letting her get away without any real consequences felt impossible to swallow. It was like she had won by simply disappearing. So there I was, stuck with a valid but essentially powerless legal victory. The law had technically sided with me, but practically, I was out of options. It was painfully obvious that traditional routes weren't going to cut it. Faced with this dead end, I started thinking outside the box. If the courts couldn't bring justice, maybe I could find another way. That's when an unconventional idea started to take shape, one that could hold Emma accountable without racking up more legal bills or endless paperwork. But what exactly could I do? Well, that was the next challenge I was about to tackle. Honestly, after all the legal routes hit dead ends, I was at a total loss. Sure, I had the judgment in my favor, but getting blood from a stone is still just a struggle. That's when I started thinking outside the box, or rather, the building. If she could just vanish and continue life like nothing happened, why not make sure anyone who ever Googled her name would see the truth? Turns out, she had registered her own domain name, like her full name.com. It was sitting unused, probably forgotten. I bought that domain the moment it came up for renewal. It felt like this small victory, just owning that digital piece of her identity. But then, that's when the real work began. I created a simple website, no fancy design, just straightforward facts. It detailed all the unpaid rent, the damages she left, the eviction process, and I even uploaded photos documenting everything. The judgment documents were there too, real proof that this wasn't just a personal vendetta. I was careful to keep it factual, no exaggerations, just the cold hard truth. What surprised me the most was diving into SEO, something I barely knew about before. I spent nights reading up on keywords, backlinks, and all the tricks to get the site to show up at the top of Google search results when someone looked up her name. Slowly but surely, it worked. Within weeks, the site started to get traffic from unexpected places. I later found out her employer had stumbled across it. A few of her old acquaintances reached out to me, surprised by what they saw. References she had counted on began to ask questions. Her so-called fresh start was unraveling in real time, all because this website was out there, silently telling a story she tried to hide forever. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It felt like I was setting the record straight, protecting other landlords from the same nightmare. The best part? It cost me way less than any lawyer or court fees I'd spent, and this wasn't something she could quietly disappear from. With the website live and continuing to affect the tenant's life, I sometimes catch myself wondering how far this digital reckoning will go. At the same time, I can't shake this odd sense of justice whispering that, maybe, I finally leveled the playing field. It's been 3 years now since I launched that website aimed at calling out the tenant who vanished on me. Honestly, keeping the site up hasn't been cheap or easy, between the hosting fees, the occasional need for updates, and just maintaining some semblance of a presence online. It's definitely been a commitment. But every dollar spent, every minute I've poured into it, feels worth it when I think about what that site has done. It's not just a collection of unpaid rent notices and legal notices anymore. Over time, it's turned into something a lot bigger, a permanent record of what she did and the choices she made. And the best part? She can't just erase it or pretend it didn't happen. She tried to slip away quietly, but now every time someone Googles her name, the truth pops up front and center. No matter how far she's moved or what new identity she tries to build in other parts of the country or the world, that site follows her like a shadow. The ripple effects have been undeniable. I've been told, through some subtle ways and sometimes outright, that her reputation has taken such a hit that finding new jobs became a nightmare. Landlords, employers, even casual acquaintances who did a quick internet search were less inclined to trust her. She's missed opportunities, faced awkward confrontations, and had her personal life strained just because the truth was out there. That's the kind of justice that goes beyond just money. It's accountability painted clearly for the world to see. In hindsight, I realize legal systems aren't always enough, especially when your opponent disappears off the radar like that. Sometimes, you have to create your own way to make sure the story doesn't end with a shrug and an, oh well. Every now and then, I think about what might have happened if I just let the whole thing go or chalked it up to a bad experience, but honestly, the long-lasting impact this has had on her makes me feel like I did something right. It's a reminder that actions have consequences, even when people try to run away from them. So here I am, still paying for that website, still updating it when needed, and just quietly watching as the reputation she tried so hard to leave behind follows her like a shadow. Because in the end, you can't escape what you do. And for her, that lesson came with a price she didn't expect. Which brings me to what I decided to say to her in one final message. A message that makes it clear this wasn't just about rent. It was about the consequences of betrayal and the cost of thinking you can get away with it.